Hi, my name is Megan Desrosiers and I'm the CEO of 100 Miles. And today is Earth Day. It's the 50th anniversary since the first Earth Day, in fact. And while I wish we were outside celebrating together, I am so pleased to be able to share my thoughts with you virtually. As the leader of a relatively new nonprofit in the Southeast, I get asked a lot about where the movement has been and where I think it's going. And I think about those questions a lot on my own as well. We face some pretty serious issues. We're learning more and more every day about how to face global challenges. So I thought today, on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, I might share some of my thoughts with you about where the movement is going. As the saying goes, though, before you can know where you're headed, you have to know where you've been.
1970 was a big year for the American environmental movement. On January 1st, President Richard Nixon signed NEPA, which established the Environmental Protection Agency. 10 days later, he addressed the nation with his State of the Union address, which stressed environmental protection for the sake of our quality of life and our economy. Here in Georgia, in February of 1970, the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act made it through the legislature. And after about a month of threatening to veto it, Governor Lester Maddox signed it into law on March 27th. And then in April, hundreds of thousands of activists came together across the country and the globe to celebrate the first Earth Day. At Earth Day, during his remarks on April 22, 1970, Senator Gaylord Nelson said, "Earth Day can, and it must, lend a new urgency and a new support to solving problems that still threaten to tear the fabric of this society. The problems of race, of war, of poverty, of modern-day institutions. Ecology is a big science, a big concept, not a cop-out. It is concerned with the total ecosystem, not just with how we dispose of our tin cans, bottles, and sewage. Environment is all of America and its problems. It is rats in the ghetto. It is a hungry child in a land of affluence. It is housing that is not worthy of the name, neighborhoods not fit to inhabit." Now, what strikes me about what Senator Nelson said is this connection to human rights. In fact, he made the connection without even taking a breath, without even skipping a beat. And he made it better than most of us do today. As we look back at where we have been, yes, let us celebrate 50 years of Earth Day. 50 years of coastal marshland protection in Georgia. 50 years of the EPA. But as much as I would like to give credit to the environmental movement, I don't think the movement is the reason these major laws passed. They happened because of the movement that took one giant step forward on December 1st, 1955. The movement that was the fight for liberty and justice for all. The movement that challenged the status quo of one set of people taking advantage of another, of one set of people having access to the best of the public resources while others automatically got sloppy seconds, of one set of people having the right to walk this planet without regard to their true impact, and another set of people who are invisible and suffering from inequality and injustice. This movement resonated with millions of people because the treatment of people based on the color of their skin is unjust. Rosa Parks did not start this movement. She is the one who tipped it over the edge. And after she sat on that bus, thousands of Americans gathered up their courage. Men, women, and children of all ages and races went outside of their comfort zones and to do really difficult stuff, to stand up for what is right, for a better future. So by the time 1970 rolled around, and it had been 15 years since Rosa Parks' arrest, and by now we've seen some of the worst acts in the history of humanity. In addition to the brutality of the civil rights movement, Americans have now witnessed 5 terrible environmental disasters which caused people to suffer, which were unfair, and which were the result of human behavior and bad decisions that ended up infringing on millions of people's right to a safe environment. At this time in 1970, there was no disconnect between human injustice and environmental injustice. They were one and the same. People were getting sick from water and air pollution. Communities were being destroyed. Quality of life sucked because only one set of people had access to the best of the public resources, while others automatically got sloppy seconds. One set of people had the right to walk this planet without regard to their true impact, and another set of people were invisible and suffering. And for the first time, wildlife was included in the class of living things that had rights and deserved justice. When Richard Nixon delivered his State of the Union address, he said, "Clean air, clean water, open spaces, these should once again be the birthright of every American. If we act now, they can be. We still think of air as free, but clean air is not free, and neither is clean water. The price tag on pollution control is high. Through our years of past carelessness, we have incurred a debt to nature, and now that debt is being called." Certainly since 1970, we have witnessed many egregious environmental disasters. It is not like passing these laws was a silver bullet. But what happened in 1970 was undoubtedly good. It launched America to the forefront of environmental protection, ahead of other first world nations. And it gave America's landscapes, wildlife, and communities an opportunity to fight back against injustices. And things did get a lot better. No one can deny that progress was made. But amidst the progress, one very important bad thing happened too. The argument that environmental protection was counter to economic development began to take hold. The word on the street was that environmentalists valued butterflies over human lives. We were anti-business and anti-jobs. We are elitists who can afford to save the whales because we don't have to worry about feeding our children. These arguments are what fractured the movement that started as a movement for justice. Today, we have separate movements, and the environmental movement is not perceived as a fight for justice. It is perceived as a political ploy, a hoax. This did not happen on accident. It was a strategic move. Can you believe that between 1964 and 1972, 6 major environmental and civil rights laws passed Congress? Can you imagine that happening today? The anti-regulation community knew that if this massive movement continued forward with people united, fighting for environmental and human rights, working for liberty and justice for all, we would be unstoppable. So the conservationists were pitted against the civil rights activists, pitted against people working to stop poverty, pitted against the labor unions and child welfare activists, pitted against people of color. And do you know what? We let that happen. We were uncomfortable talking about race because most of us are white. Sure, most of us were well-intentioned, but we felt guilty. So we stayed quiet and did what we felt comfortable doing, to the detriment of both movements, to the detriment of the fight for justice, and to the detriment of the people who needed us. It is time to come back together and remind everyone that a clean environment is a basic human right. So here we are. Today, we sit in our homes as environmental rules and regulations are being rolled back. Permits are being issued at federal and state levels, and injustices are happening to people and wildlife all around us. Today, we are isolated, prevented from doing anything to stop the erosion of our democracy and our right to a clean environment. And why? Because environmental protection is still viewed as something extra. So when a crisis occurs and our economy suffers, the first things rolled back are the rules that protect our clean air and water and our wildlife. And do you know what that does? It makes those suffering the most from anything, whether it be COVID-19, climate change, poverty, hunger, racism, you name it. It makes them suffer more Because now they don't just have to worry about catching a virus or feeding their children, but now they also have to worry about those things and whether or not they are drinking clean water. Now, more than ever, all of us understand that our future is uncertain. COVID-19 is teaching us that as we face global challenges, we all need to take action to protect ourselves and each other.
My message to you on this Earth Day is both hopeful and urgent. We do have to stop seeing the environmental movement as something extra. When we are allowed to come out of our homes and enter back into society and come together, we need to build a broader coalition, and we need to change our message. We need to remember and we need to remind people constantly that environmental protection is about justice, and justice is about equity. To build a broader coalition, we have to open our hearts. We have to accept new ideas. We have to talk to new people. We have to go outside of our comfort zones. We need to bring more people, different people, to the table. These people are young and old, white and black, people who own binoculars and people who do not. The bottom line is we need to bring together all people who need to drink clean water and breathe clean air. This is the future of the environmental movement. But it's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen unless we take the lessons that we are learning right here, right now, in this moment, on this 50th Earth Day. Now more than ever, all of us understand that our future is uncertain. COVID-19 has taught us that as we face global challenges, we all need to act to protect ourselves and each other. Our movement, the environmental movement, is about justice. It's not about politics. It's about justice.
"100 Miles is a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving and protecting Georgia's 100-mile coast through advocacy, education, and citizen engagement. To learn more about us, please visit www.100miles.org.